You're listening to the HR Happy Hour Network, sponsored by WorkHuman. If you've ever wondered what good can come of AI for HR, meet Human Intelligence. It uses the uniquely authentic data of WorkHuman's #1 rated employee recognition platform to uncover insights into good culture, skills, performance, and more. It also helps coach employees on what good peer-to-peer recognition looks like, turning every good job into better engagement, retention, and well-being. And it surfaces feel-good stories that illustrate the best of your company's culture. Learn about human intelligence at workhuman.com. That's WORKHUMAN.com, and join their force for good.
Welcome to the HR Happy Hour Show. My name's Steve Boese. I'm with Trish Steed. Trish, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you today, Steve?
I am great. It's great to be doing a happy hour. It's been a little bit, I feel like. We've been killing the Outworking Americas and other things we've been doing and writing a ton, but it's great to be back doing this.
I agree. We have written more probably in the first few months of this year than in the last 3 years combined. So I'm really excited to get back to the podcasting a little bit.
Yeah, lots of great stuff out at the website. So we are joined by, you can see already if you're watching this on YouTube, Naomi Lariviere from ADP. She's the Chief Product Owner and Vice President of ADP Shared Services. And we're going to dig into big issues in the world of work, what ADP, how ADP is seeing them, how they're helping their customers meet those issues, and just some of the really cool development that is going on at ADP. So Naomi, first off, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me. This is a lovely opportunity to catch up with some friends that I've talked to before. So looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, that's great. And I know you two are friends. You were hanging out recently at the ADP Meeting of the Minds event, which maybe we'll start there and give us, a minute or two on that, Naomi. I wasn't able to but I'd love for you to share a little bit about what happened there.
You missed out. It was a great
I
event. Obviously, we were always excited to be able to talk to our clients and give them updates on what we're doing, how we're thinking about things, and really understanding and celebrating them. That's really what Meeting of the Minds is about, is celebrating our clients and how they work with us and how they engage with us. And also it's a wonderful learning event as well. So I thought it was a lot of fun. Trish, how about you?
Well, I agree. I think it's always fun as an analyst to come and you get all of the product updates, which is awesome. It's what we're looking for. But also being able to talk to some of the customers. I sort of spent my whole career being a customer of ADP before I became an analyst. So for me, it was also exciting to see the advancements that have been made since I last officially used the product. So
Yeah.
it was good all the way around. But we also had Lindsay Vaughn, which was incredibly insightful and inspiring. So I kind of went out of there with about 10 or 12 pages full of notes of things that I took away from the event. So it was really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll have to make it next time for sure. So Naomi, everybody knows ADP, right? The number, the gorilla of HR tech, right? 1 million plus clients. I don't know what the number is anymore. It's probably climbing, right, as we speak. But maybe you could help us understand a little bit about what you do at ADP. So you're the Vice President, Chief Product Owner and Vice President of ADP Shared Services. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that, what that's about.
Yeah, sure. So at ADP, I oversee quite a large portfolio of products. Generally, it's products that are used across our different business lines. So think about payroll, think about talent, think about access and identity management, think about mobile experiences, employee manager experiences. All of that sits within the portfolio of products that I oversee. But the other thing that I do oversee is our very large AI program, and we call that ADP Assist.
Yeah, and that was something that I was really glad to see highlighted at Meeting of the Minds. It was certainly far superior to, I think, many that have been out in the field already. I'd love for you to maybe talk a little bit about that, because right now, one of the biggest questions I think Steve and I are getting when we're talking with HR leaders, whether it's at events or on the show, is they don't understand the difference of who really has AI and what that means. What are you hearing from your customers, and how are you telling them about how ADP's approach with AI Assist is different?
Yeah, it's funny. When I talk with clients, I think a lot of our clients and just in general, when I'm talking, they're still stuck on like, what is AI and what
Mm.
does generative AI mean? And what does it mean for them? That's generally the biggest question. And actually, that was a large question at Meeting of the Minds. And then how can ADP help them with that? So, when we think about how we're bringing AI to their experience, what we're really thinking about is how do you make them much more not only efficient but also very effective in what they're doing in their jobs. So you know when we're being asked some of the basic questions like what is AI and like should I trust it, what we always want to make sure that they understand is as we're building these products, we're building it with compliance right from the get-go. So our whole product development philosophy starts with, how do we use your data, you know privacy, compliance, security matters. We are accounting for all of that from idea to the actual production of that effort that we're bringing to market for our clients. So it's a whole entire journey as we go from soup to nuts.
I'm glad that you mentioned that people are still asking, really, what is it? Because I was recently at HR Tech in Europe, and that was one of the biggest questions. And from some really large organizations where the head of HR is sort of still thinking, like, oh, we're so far behind. It's almost a relief to me to think, your customers can come to you and say, I still am really trying to learn what this is and how it impacts me, and not feel like they're far behind, right? That you guys are leading that charge for them and they can trust that. That's also another factor, trusting the data.
Yeah. Yeah, trust the data, but I will say, like, HR is not behind in this race. I think a lot of organizations, regardless of size of like the bigger organizations, definitely AI efforts tend to be concentrated in technology departments, and they're thinking about, whatever their core product or service that they're offering to their clients. They're thinking about how do I use AI that way. They're not necessarily looking internally outside of maybe sales organizations or call center environments. But the wonderful thing about working for ADP is we think about our users, relentlessly, and providing value for them. So we know that HR departments, they're still very manual, right? And what we want to do is demystify this technology, but also make it so easy that it's just there in the product for them. They don't have to overthink it. They don't have to overanalyze it. It just works, and it's within the flow of what they're trying to do. And, that's where that efficiency and effectiveness is coming in. That's how we're thinking about it. It shouldn't, I don't think that AI should be this big neon sign that is saying like AI is here. It really should be, used in scenarios that actually help the user do their job and get them out of kind of the minutia of some of the data entry that they still do to like really moving them from this, kind of paper pushing or data pushing kind of function to much more of a strategic player. They have the insights at their fingertips. They're able to talk at the big tables around, talent strategies, organizational change management that they need to do. And that's how we think about facilitating those conversations for them.
Yeah. Naomi, thanks for that. Yeah. And I think we're hearing more of that, like in trying to get folks to stop, even on the provider side as well, to talk a little bit less about the technology very specifically, or just talk about the solution versus talking about process, efficiency, getting it into the flow of work, right? Things like that. And I think we're starting to get there in the conversations, and maybe that will allay some of the fear too, if there is out there, right? It's, oh my gosh, I must go use AI now. Well, no, we're going to, create a job rec and go source some candidates for it, which is something we have done for years and years, but now we've got some extra capabilities. Some of them are AI capabilities, right, to help us do that more efficiently. And that's really the conversation.
Yeah, when I talk to clients and they're like, well, where do I even begin on this journey? Part of what I actually say is have a really good understanding of what your function or your organization is doing and how the work gets done. Because if you actually understand that, and this is what we spend a lot of our time with our clients trying to understand is how do they do the world of work? And then basically you pick off AI to support those activities that they're doing. So it shouldn't be like, oh, I've got this new bank, fandangled thing. It should just be like, oh, I can source candidates much quicker. I can activate a bunch of payroll changes very quickly. I have better insights on my turnover. All of those things. That's what we really think that this technology should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned especially that piece on like sort of predicting and having insights on your turnover. That was one I was going to ask you about because a lot of companies are out there saying, how is this really going to impact me? And a lot of what we see and hear, just even in the media, in more general terms, is around how it can help you take a look backward. But maybe talk a little bit because I know at Meeting of the Minds there was a lot of talk about sort of the forecasting you can do that is AI enabled and enhanced, and predictive things you can do with it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, I also want to maybe kind of give a ground rule around AI. So, one of the biggest things that I think all clients, all users of this technology need to understand is if you have bad data in, you're going to have a bad result coming out. So, it's really important that, anybody who's endeavoring on an AI journey, that they really focus on their data because that data is the key to having a good ability to actually like understand the data, interpret the data, and then use it for like helping with insights. We talked about the turnover insights, but maybe it's the why did my paycheck go, up, $10 or reduce $10, and like why did that happen? And is this a seasonal trend? Maybe I worked more hours this week than I did last week, whatever the scenario is. But if you have good data in your system when you're deploying AI to it, you can, not only understand historical patterns, but then you can actually start to predict, well, what's going to happen in October, where when budgets might be thin, and I'm thinking about the year end and bonuses and all of those things. For an HR practitioner, like that HR business partner, they'll have a richer set of information that they can help move the direction of their organization in terms of facilitating big decisions that they're making.
Yeah, I think too, when you're using a solution like that, it helps you actually ask questions you wouldn't naturally have thought to ask, right? Because by asking one, you're sort of getting led down a path of other things. Do you want to consider this? Should you ask that? It's truly more of a conversation than I think a lot of people anticipate it being. It's not just you have to know exactly what to ask, right?
Well, and I think it democratizes analytics to a certain extent.
Mm.
A lot of large organizations, they'll have these analytics groups that are, their sole purpose and journey is to analyze all the data. But if you're like a smaller organization and ADP has, over 900,000 smaller businesses, you may not have the luxury of that. And you're having data and then trying to interpret it. Now that I have these tools at my fingertips, I can actually understand what might be happening in my organization quicker with less friction than, hiring, some sort of analyst to do that work for me. So like now we're putting the data in their hands in a much more useful fashion than we ever have before.
Yeah.
Yeah, Naomi, we're talking a lot about technology, right? Which is sort of what we do on the HR Happy Hour show. But I wonder if we can sort of put the technology over here for just 1 second and talk a little bit about as you guys work with customers. And I know it's a tough question because there's so many of them, but we always hear about hey, it's retention, it's engagement, it's finding candidates, et cetera. Are there any themes that are coming out in 2025 that you're hearing a lot from customers or that you're trying to respond to help a wider swath of employers, maybe in the U.S.? Like what kind of business and talent challenges do you hear say more of in 2025 perhaps than others?
Yeah, like obviously there's always the, do I have the right people? Do I have the right talent? Do I understand my bench strengths? Do I
Mm,
understand what skills I have and maybe what I'm missing? Um, Especially what's going on broadly. There's individuals that are really thinking very hard about, where am I going with my talent, and how can I best leverage in the most effective margin positive way the resources that I have and the business objectives that I'm trying to achieve. So I
mhm.
think, it can be anything from like how am I staffing to, how do I upskill individuals to it could be like I'm being forced to make a different decision about my talent because of, the economic situation
Right.
that's going on. So.
Yeah, I think that when you're talking about what their needs are and what they're focused on, one of the things I always think about though is what else should they be thinking about? Are there any maybe key areas around employing individuals that they should be thinking about? So maybe even like what you all at ADP are strategizing for the next, say, 1 to 3 years as is becoming more important.
Uh, well, tell me a little bit more on that, or kind of like where you might be thinking on that one, Trish.
Of course, no. I'm thinking more in terms of, obviously when you're in HR, you're in a role that is largely reactive, right? You're
Mhm.
reacting to situations, you're reacting to the economy, maybe different political things that are going on or social things that are going on. And so it's a lot of reacting. And I always looked to ADP, for example, when I was an HR leader, to tell me maybe some of those things that I'm not thinking about enough. So if I'm really highly focused on keeping my current employees from a retention perspective or keeping them more engaged, I might be missing out on some key things. Are there any that kind of come to mind as things they just should be also thinking about?
Yeah, I guess, a lot of what we spend our time focusing on is compliance related matters, whether it's at home or abroad. There's just a lot of change going on right now. Like my team that manages the payroll process here in the US, we've just completed over 800 different statutory changes that have
Mm,
happened. Like if I'm a client, and I have people in every single state and all the different locales. It's like, how do I keep them informed? I mean, that's where our products can actually help them by delivering insights. We also have, part of ADP Assist. They can actually chat with us and actually understand like what's the latest minimum wage law and what's the rate, and we can tell them who might be impacted by a potential future change. So there's that. But the other thing that we are thinking about is, ADP is a global company. We are reacting to what's going on in the world. So we're thinking about some of the different EU AI laws and how that impacts what we're building and how it supports clients in the future. So and we weave all of that into our compliance by design process.
I love that you mentioned compliance. I wasn't sure that's where you're going to go, but I was hoping so because, well, I think we've got a report coming out actually about compliance and just how HR leaders can think of it in a more proactive way. And you're right, it's staggering the amount of things that change in any given year, and especially now that people are working from really anywhere at this point, right? In a different, whether they're hybrid or fully remote, it changes all of the tax implications and other implications around compliance. So it was always a favorite part of my job, actually staying up on compliance. But it's good to see that that's really going to be aided by the kinds of questions. I can't even imagine how my life would have been easier just asking an AI agent about compliance in a certain state or which part of the population and the organization would be impacted by a certain change. Instead, my team and I spent sometimes days, maybe weeks researching and hoping for the best, hoping to get the right answer. So that alone, I think you're saving teams a large amount of time of research.
Yeah, I mean, it's right at your fingertips. I mean, even when I started at ADP 6 years ago, like our typical way of communicating a compliance change was like you pushed an email on a Thursday afternoon, and depending on how many products at ADP you use, you could be getting like 5 or 6 different notifications about a different compliance change. And I think about that especially as a lot of our clients do use multiple vendors to solve their HR needs. All of that information coming at you so fast and furious, it's like, what do I do with it? And that's really when we're thinking about the products, is it should just be there. It should just be natural. And like as you think about, oh, what's this Pennsylvania local change that's happening, I can just talk to ADP Assistant, it'll give me the answer. So
Love it.
Yeah, and some of the things we're sort of describing, whether it's a compliance kind of matter or some of the payroll things you mentioned, Naomi, I would tell folks that if you haven't seen how some of this works and how it demos, it's phenomenally good. It's actually quite fascinating and exciting, right? To the mechanisms by which you can, inquire on the system for information, but also have that two-way conversation to gain insights and also to kind of affect change. It's nothing at all like how we came up using these kinds of enterprise tools. It's completely different, and it's so much more powerful and effective. So I would tell anyone who hasn't actually seen this yet is, reach out and get a demo if you're an ADP customer now, or even if you're not, just it's worth your time to see how this stuff works, because it's that powerful, I think.
well, I appreciate that, and so I'm sure my entire team would appreciate that comment.
Yeah.
I think we have really been focusing on solving, like there's obvious use cases that everybody can solve, which is like job description generation and things like that, sourcing capabilities. But like what we really want to do is the way that we design a lot of our solutions is with our clients from day one. They're usually the ones that come to us with the idea, and they follow us throughout the journey as we're wireframing things out, as we're building it, as we're going through and testing it, so that we hit the mark every single time. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is make their day better, like less friction, less difficulty, because they're in the business of supporting people. The technology doesn't need to be a hindrance to that process. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, I think also when you work with ADP, you have all of your different connections, so that as a customer, you feel informed the whole way along. You feel included, or at least I always did. And I think anyone I've talked to that is a customer or has used the product, they feel the same way. It's not just the piece of technology. You actually need that support there, so that you're part of the discussion and part of the changes, right? Maybe talk a little bit about what excites you the most, whether it's working with customers on kind of the future direction, or even on your own team, how you all are seeing kind of the direction of ADP going in the next couple of years.
That's a big question. What I would say, and we haven't actually touched on it. I'm most excited about the introduction of agentic agents at the moment. We have a large focus there. I think it really is going to be a game changer. I mean, like this technology is already like a game changer anyway, but this will really take all HR systems, like there's going to be so much leaps and bound jumping in the next 24 months, I would say, around this, and for those of you who maybe are wondering what an agent is, an agent is something that has agency. It can reason, it can think, it can adapt, it can learn, it can do. And when you put that into people terms, if you think about, processing a payroll or a job change or something like that, it's an activity that can happen all on its own. Now, one of the important things that I just would add is, when we think about you'll probably hear agents, you'll probably hear the words autonomous out there during this time. But if you think about it, put that into the context of something that we all know and love, cruise control. When there's a certain car company that has self-driving companies. People either trust it or don't trust it. But if you think about when cruise control was introduced, a lot of us still, we pressed the button and then we still had our foot hovering over the brake to make sure that nothing was going awry. And as people got used to it and understood how the technology worked, car companies developed more things that actually made sense, to where eventually you can have a car that drives itself. That's actually kind of like how we're thinking about what we're doing is, we can build agents that, can do things for our users. And then slowly over time, as we build trust with them and they have input to the process and they have the ability to say, yes, I do want you to do this, or no, I don't want you to do this. There's that human in the loop. We are going to be building trust to maybe potentially one day we'll have an autonomous HCM system out there. I don't know, especially with how people buy technology these days. But, that's probably the most exciting piece of work that's going on here at ADP. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. We are hearing a lot about that. Trish has been covering this and writing about it, and trying to create those kinds of educational resources as well, right, for folks about AI and agentic AI that you've been working on, I know.
Yeah, I think
it's a really exciting time for HR and just what this technology can do. And I'd say we're probably all in the very early stages of it because this technology is only about 6 months old. So
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the human in the loop part too, because that's also another big question. People are like, wait, am I just turning over my own agency completely? No, and you can insert yourself at any point. Maybe in one organization in a certain process, you insert people toward the beginning. Maybe sometimes it's at the end as a check, right? It gives the client, I think, a lot of power to control where and when and how often they get to sort of be in a process, right? And maybe, like you said, over time, as they learn to trust what's happening through their own experience with it, then they can maybe decide they're going to step out of it a little bit more, right? You're not set in stone.
Yeah, I don't think, I think it will be a while before you actually have like an agent that just runs an entire process end to end because of the trust factor. And because, what we know is that everybody well, and even some of the regulations that are required in different countries, like you're required to do certain steps and you couldn't automate that anyway. So, I think it's going to be a journey of innovation over the next 36 months or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time. There are definitely folks out there speaking even outside of HCM tech and more broadly, right, to enterprise or just tech in general, saying what's happening with AI and what's happening with agents is akin to a seismic shift like the internet was, right? 25 years ago or more than that, 35 years ago. And what mobile was, say, starting 20 years ago, right? And so now that's this, right? It's going to be that significant and that impactful. I think it probably will be, honestly. Now we'll see how things play out. But I could see a time. I thought it was going to be voice, and I think I was wrong on that one. Like when we started doing voice, devices in our homes and things like that, and I thought that was going to be the big thing. That was going to be the big shift in some of these systems. But I think those kind of natural language, inquiries and prompts and things like that. It's going to be a fundamental part of how these systems work and how people engage with them. And I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, it should just be so easy. Like, if I'm sitting there brushing my hair in the morning and I think about, oh, I need to take a day off. Like, I don't want to have to open up my laptop, sign into my system and do it. I just want to be able to say like, hey Siri, and I can
see,
do
you're
that.
with me on the voice. I'm still championing voice. I'm big on that.
I still like the assistants, personally, but if you think about how, I see people walking around and saw it at the conference, they're sitting there doing this into their phone. And, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So it's like, as technologists, we have to figure out how to work with the technology and how people like to interact and behave, but then make them smarter as they're doing it. So
Yeah.
I think there's lots of opportunity.
Yeah, it's super exciting time, and it's great to hear from just some, right, of what you guys are focusing on at ADP. I do think it's important, right, to follow what companies like ADP are doing, just because they're so influential and so many workers are impacted, right? We're talking millions, right? I don't know what it is, Naomi, anymore. Is it 1 in 10 or 1 in 9? There's some number. It's really high, right? How many
One
people
in six.
one in
One in
oh, so it's
six.
even higher. It keeps getting higher. We're 1 in 6, right? So chances are everybody listening to this, you're either using ADP or you know somebody who's using ADP or someone in your family is getting paid right through ADP, and it's a big deal, right? And it's important to just us as followers of workplace and workplace tech to really stay connected with what's happening there, because you guys are so influential and have done, honestly, you know, have a real good history of innovation, not just in AI, but we start talking about things with data cloud and some of the other innovations over the years, like phenomenally powerful in Google, relying on that data, honestly, like leveraging that many millions of people data and all that information that you can glean from that and make it available to customers. It's been a great story over the years, and I really appreciated following it. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Well, cool. Naomi, thanks so much. It's been great to chat with you, for taking some time with us today. Give us a little ADP update. But yeah, as I expected, we talked a lot about AI, but that's probably going to be the conversation 2025. Is there any last things you want to leave us with? Things coming up for you? Just go to ADP to learn more. Anything else you want
Yeah.
to share with our
Yeah.
audience?
We've got we have a very busy spring and summer and fall already planned with our AI strategy. So if you want to learn more, go to adp.com/AI.
Nice. Nice.
You get
Great
that
stuff.
demo, right, Steve?
Man, it's cool. Trish, there's a lot of you've been championing payroll innovation and certain things you wanted to see in payroll. And I don't want to get into a laundry list of functionality at this point, but I do think a lot of what you've been talking about over the years is now showing up in ADP solutions around payroll specifically, right?
Yes.
Some of the things about, oh, what happens if I move? What happens if I take this job? What happens if I change my tax withholding, right? And being able to sort of see the impact of that, right? You've been talking about that for 15 years, I think. But
Well, and that's because that's what was needed. I mean,
yeah,
I think back to just what we're talking about right now, and it's not even about AI specifically. There's other technology
yeah, yeah,
innovations they've done, but when I was sitting there and I was an ADP customer, and I would like have exception reports, for example, when we'd run payroll. Personally, as the head of HR, I was sitting there for several hours a week at night missing out on being with my kids at their football practice and cheer practice. And so when I think of it in that terms, that you can save time and be able to do that in literally mere seconds or even a minute, maybe what would take me hours to do, that's time you're getting back with your family. That's time you're getting back for yourself,
yeah,
right? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's things that kept you late, and now it's
Yeah.
solved.
And Trish, your experience is not it's not unique. That's what we hear a lot. And actually, ADP was started by a gentleman who was actually covering for somebody who was sick, right? That's ADP's origin
Oh,
story. And
wow.
if you think about like how we think about payroll, I think about every user who can't take off at the end of the year, or they always have to be at their chained to their desk Mondays and Tuesdays because they're processing payroll. I want to make their day better. I want
mm,
them to be able to take that summer vacation with their kids. I want them to be able to enjoy Christmas and, be able to go and throw snowballs with their children. Those are the things that actually I worry about, and trying to make sure all the payroll work that we've got going here as part of my portfolio, as well as the AI aspects, and really bringing that to make their day easier, smarter, and just a little bit more human.
yeah. I
And
love
you've
it.
done it, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah,
thing we all want really is time. You want more time, and that's so
Yeah.
difficult to ever get. And I think ADP is finding a way to give that back to people for whatever
Yeah.
use. Right.
For sure. Great stuff. Naomi Lariviere, she is the Chief Product Owner and Vice President of ADP Shared Services. It's been great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. And Trish, great stuff. I know you geek out on the HR tech and the payroll stuff. So I'm glad we were able to do this today. And I have an idea for a really good follow-up. I'll tell you offline, Trish, we'll have to talk about. But it's been great having Naomi here. Go to adp.com/AI to learn more about what we've talked about today. And remember to subscribe to the show. Go to hrhappyhour.net for all the archives. Anywhere you get your podcast, leave us a review. Let us know what you think. 5 stars probably for today, I think. We appreciate that. So we'll see you next time, and bye for now.